Hello and good evening. Thank you for joining us for this virtual public meeting. I am Jennifer Flynn and I have the honor to serve as the superintendent at Cod National Seashore. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Cable Road Trail Project virtual public meeting. We're glad to have you with us this evening to learn about and provide us feedback on this exciting park project being undertaken in Eastham, Massachusetts. The park is undertaking this project to expand the existing path that runs from Nauset Light Beach to the Three Sisters lighthouses, and then we will continue that path all the way to Nauset Road. This path, the new path, will run the entire length of Cable Road. Next slide, please. What you can expect from the meeting tonight is first and foremost a presentation about this project. Why it's needed, what we hope it will accomplish, the area where the work will occur, what our current conditions are, and design concepts for what this could look like. At the end of the presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask us questions and provide input on your preferences in the Q&A section. We will also provide you information on how to comment over the next 2 weeks in the Planning, Environment, and Public Comment System, referred to as PEPC by the Park Service, which is a public format for soliciting comments like these. Now, the live Q&A is open already. So if you look at your screen, you should be able to find the section that says Live Event Q&A. Within that block, select Ask a Question, type your comment or question, and then select Send. That will make it visible to us, and members of our team will start reviewing those questions so that when we get to the Q&A, we're ready to talk to you about what you've submitted. Next slide, please. Why we're doing this project and why we're excited about this project is that we have a few goals. To increase safety for residents, students, and the public, to connect the key destinations of Nauset High School, Three Sisters Lighthouses, and Nauset Light Beach, to reduce conflicts between vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists on this busy road, and overall enhance the visitor experience. You'll hear from Nate Ritchie from the National Park Service's Denver Service Center, the entity that supports parks like ours with projects of this scale, for the next few minutes. Nate, would you please start to walk us through what this project could look like?
Thank you, Superintendent Flynn. Yes, I'd be happy to do so. My name is Nate Ritchie. I am the project manager for the Cable Road Multi-Use Path Project. This evening, I'm going to talk about, and I'm happy to be with you this evening and tell you about the project. I'm going to talk a little bit about the need, the benefits of this project. We're going to talk through the design considerations, the things we're thinking about as we enter the design phase. We're going to look at the existing conditions, or essentially what is happening in this area now. And finally, we're going to end with the 2 concepts. Next slide. So benefits of the project, we do anticipate a number. So Superintendent Flynn talked about safety. So we anticipate safer travel for pedestrians and cyclists along Cable Road. We anticipate safer travel for motorists as well, because we're going to reduce those users or remove those users from the roadway. We want to enhance access to Nauset Light Beach, to the cultural areas. We want to support recreation and wellness programs, and ultimately we want to improve the experience for residents, for visitors, for students, really for anybody who's using Cable Road or Cable Road Multi-Use Path. Next slide. All right, design considerations. So as we enter the design phase, we are thinking about a lot of things. And if we've missed something here, please place it in the Q&A. It's a perfect time to do so. We are thinking about adjacent residences. We will look at this in a little bit more detail, but there are a number of private properties along Cable Road. Driveway crossings, there are driveway crossings associated with those private properties, so we want to make those crossings safe. Screening and buffers, we want to consider how to provide a little bit of separation between the new multi-use path and the road. The high school, we of course know that's a major user group that's on the west side of this project. We do want to accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists where possible. That really has to do with how wide we make this or how wide we are able to make this multi-use path. Utility poles. There are utility poles on the north side of Cable Road along the entire roadway. There are some potential conflicts that we'll look at. And then future connection to Eastham Complete Street System. We anticipate, or we know that Eastham is looking at some pedestrian and cycling infrastructure improvements on Nauset Road. So we would like our pathway to connect to that. In the federal government, we follow the Architectural Barriers Act, and we would like it to meet accessibility standards where possible. Okay, so let's orient ourselves to the project site here a little bit. In the blacked dashed area, you can see that Cable Road's in the center of that. That really is ultimately our project location. Just to get you oriented, we've got, of course, we've got the beach here to the right of your image to the east. That is where Nauset Light Beach parking lot is. On the left of the image, on the west, we've got Nauset Regional High School. So the project starts essentially at the Nauset Light Beach parking lot, and it will terminate at the intersection of Nauset Road. Next slide. We've broken this up into 3 segments, and that's how we'll talk about the project this evening. So going east to west, the first segment will be between the beach parking lot and the Three Sisters lighthouses. The center segment, number 2, excuse me, is between the Three Sisters lighthouses and the high school. And the third segment is in front of Nauset Regional High School, and it terminates at that intersection with Nauset Road. All right, so we'll dive in a little bit. We're going to look at what the existing conditions are in each of these 3 segments. So orienting yourself here with the map, we of course have the beach parking on the far right. We have a number of private residences and private driveways. You can see those with red arrows here. We have Ocean View Road, of course, and then we have the Three Sisters lighthouses sort of on the left of the screen, and the driveway associated with that. Next slide. We'll look at a few slides here of images showing what's out there today. So this image, you're looking across Ocean View Road. That's going left to right on your screen. You're sort of standing in the beach parking area. In this segment, in segment 1, this is the only segment with an existing trail. You can see here it's made of asphalt. It's approximately 5 feet in width. This is also the only segment with a crosswalk. It's the painted crosswalk. And in this image, you're sort of looking down Cable Road. Next slide. So a couple more images of the existing trail. Again, it's asphalt. It's approximately 5 feet in width. If you've used Cable Road multi-use path in this section, this trail, it functions similar to sort of a sidewalk. It stays relatively close to Cable Road. In fact, in the image on the right there, you can see it's immediately adjacent to the roadway, separated only by a curb. Just north of that, just outside of the image, there are private properties, private residences. I mentioned the driveways before. Here's a couple examples. So the image on the right, you have a private residence driveway. The image on the left, that is the entrance to Three Sisters Lighthouses parking. We are considering, and it will be part of our planning, is how do we make those crossings safe. Final set of images here. So the existing trail terminates at the parking immediately south of Three Sisters Light parking area. That's the image on the right. The existing alignment of the trail, you can see it's asphalt there on the left. It does sort of go between a couple of lighthouses, so it sort of meanders in that area now. All right, segment 2. This is the center segment. So this segment on the right of your screen there, the sort of eastern edge of it would be those lighthouses we just talked about. We do have some private residences. We have some private driveways, 3 in this section. And then the sort of western boundary of this will be the high school entrance. One more thing to point out here. So as part of the park's long-term planning, they are considering beach parking, future Nauset Light Beach parking, north of Cable Road, kind of adjacent to the high school property. And you can see that on your screen on the left. There's no immediate plans to build that, but we do want to consider the alignment of our Cable Road multi-use path and how it would relate to that. So a few slides of images of what's happening in that area today. I mentioned utility poles and potential conflicts. You can see in the image in the left there, we have Cable Road, of course, on the left side of the image, and then we have a utility pole that's relatively close to that. We have essentially 9 feet of space on public lands that are within the right-of-way from the edge of the roadway that are part of the public land. So the existing utility pole is in that space. Beyond that, in that image, you see there are some pieces of infrastructure associated with private property, so fences and that sort of thing. One other thing I want to note in these images, we do have a little bit of slope in this segment, so we have a little bit of a hill. You can see that image in the right, someone walking along the road there, and the natural topography sort of slopes up. Okay, existing right-of-way corridor here. So this is just a little further down Cable Road. We have an example of a private driveway, the image on the left. I will also note there are a few minor drainage features, flumes. There's an example of one of those on the right image. And the last photo, we are considering a concept that moves the alignment of the multi-use path a little bit further into the wooded area. This is a sample photo of what that would look like. A lot of trees, a lot of vegetation. You can see just a little sliver of Cable Road to the right of the image there, but you get a sense of that it is very vegetated in this area. Okay, so this is the final segment. This is the segment in front of Nauset Regional High School. There are 2 entrances to the high school, to their parking areas. So this segment of trail kind of goes between those, and it will terminate on the left side of the screen at Nauset, the intersection with Nauset Road. So just one set of images here. What you're seeing on the image on the left, you can see the high school in the background there. There is not an existing trail in this area. However, there is a little bit of sidewalk, and that is associated with new construction of the high school. As you get beyond the high school, approaching Nauset Road, that's the image on the right, you kind of return to that wooded condition that we saw in segment 2. All right, so let's take a look at the concepts. Before I dive into these, a few notes. One is that we are very early in the design process, so we would gladly welcome your comments at this point. These are not the final alignments. We are going to further define these and get into the more details, but these are our initial concepts. The second note is that you'll notice both of these concepts, which are the black dashed lines, are north of Cable Road. I do want to mention that we considered, but ultimately dismissed an alignment south of Cable Road. There are a number of reasons for that. One is that there are steep slopes, sort of in that segment 2 area in the middle section of the road. There is a section of guardrail. There also were significant grading concerns with private driveways on the south. And one of the stated goals is we want to create connections to Three Sisters Lighthouses, which of course is on the north side of Cable Road. So for those reasons, we ultimately dismissed that concept. So we're left with these 2. We've got the first concept, recreation, that's on the top of your screen. We've got the second concept, transportation, that's on the bottom of your screen. And you'll note immediately there are quite a few similarities between these, and there are differences. So we'll dive into those now. We broke these up into the same 3 segments that we looked at for those existing conditions. So segment 1, again, is sort of between the beach parking and the lighthouses. Segment 2 is the center segment between the lighthouses and the high school. And segment 3 is the segment that will be in front of the high school. So segment 1 is very similar for both concepts. It largely follows the existing alignment of the photos that we showed in some of the previous slides. We do hope to expand the trail slightly where possible to meet one of our goals, which is to provide access for both pedestrians and cyclists. But you will note that in this image, there are some areas, one in particular, where the trail is between Cable Road and a private property, and it will be more narrow in that section. It will be similar to what it is today, so adjacent to Cable Road. One final note about this segment, and this is true of both concepts, The previous trail alignment went between some of the lighthouses in the Three Sisters Lighthouses area. We are proposing to bring that trail south of that, so between Cable Road and the lighthouses. Next slide. All right, so this is really where we see a big difference, particularly in segment 2, that's on the top of your screen. One other note is that the areas shaded in green in these graphics are public lands. The areas shaded or not shaded, I'm sorry, which appear sort of gray in these images, those are private residences or private property. So this first concept, this recreation concept, you can see that black dotted line there, our proposed alignment. We are going behind or north of the private residences. So a few notes in terms of what that sort of looks like and feels like. You will be, you'll have quite a bit of separation from Cable Road in that area. You would be in that wooded area, much like the photo that you saw earlier. You would hear a little bit less of the road, but this is a longer alignment than the next concept that we will look at. As you continue to travel west on the multi-use path, it comes much closer to the roadway. And then as you approach segment 3, which is the same in both concepts, we anticipate that the new alignment of the multi-use path will run parallel to Cable Road, and of course will terminate at the intersection with Nauset Road. All right, so a few graphics here to give you a sense of what it might look like. So segment 1, you can see there's a little bit of separation between the trail and the road, perhaps a little bit of vegetation in between the multi-use path and the road. In segment number 2, that's where you have more separation. So you may have a number of trees, perhaps even more than the graphic there, separating the multi-use path and the road. And then segment number 3 is very similar to segment number 1 in that there is a little bit of separation between the path and the road, perhaps a little bit of vegetation in that area, but it's not a huge amount of space. All right, concept number 2, transportation. Let's jump right into this. We did separate it again in those 3 segments. Okay, so again, here's segment 1, largely similar to what you saw in the previous concept, does follow that existing alignment. We cross the driveways, we cross the entrance to the Three Sisters Lighthouse parking area. This concept, similar to the previous one, we do slightly change the alignment where we are in front of the Three Sisters Lighthouse. We're proposing to place that between the road and the lighthouses. And here's really where they differ. So segment 2 is on the top of your screen there. You can see this is a much shorter alignment. It is much closer to the roadway. It's about 1,000 feet shorter than the previous concept. So this is a much more direct route. This concept in one segment does travel between the roadway and a private property. In that segment, we would have to consider a more narrow multi-use path than the rest of the multi-use path. And we'll talk about in a future slide sort of what that means. It maintains that sort of close connection to Cable Road throughout segment 2, and then you enter segment 3 as you approach the high school. This is the same as the previous concept, parallel to Cable Road and terminating at Nauset Road. Okay, so a sense of what those might look like, what this might look like, this transportation concept. Again, segment 1 and 3, the graphics on the right there, segment 1 and 3 are largely similar. It's segment 2 where we really see a little bit of divergence. And you get the sense there that the multi-use path, particularly where we travel in front of private property, is attached to Cable Road, would feel and function a little bit more like a sidewalk, perhaps separated by a curb. Next slide. And just to sort of tie it all up. So here's the 2 concepts side by side. We've got recreation on the left, we have transportation on the right. You can see that recreation on the left, we've got a more meandering trail experience. On the right, you're much more direct. Recreation, it's going to be wooded along the trail. You have a limited view of Cable Road, probably here less of Cable Road as well. The transportation concept, there's not going to be a lot of vegetation between the road and the trail. You would be attached to Cable Road, whereas with the recreation concept, you're separated. Recreation is a longer distance. As I mentioned before, it's in the ballpark of 1,000 feet longer distance. Transportation is shorter distance, much more direct. And finally, with the recreation trail, we'd be able to maintain at least an 8-foot width, 8 to 10 feet width. So it would accommodate both bikes and pedestrians versus the transportation trail, in particular, where we travel in front of private property. The trail would be more narrow. What that means is that would be pedestrian only. So if you were riding your bike, we would ask you to dismount in that section and walk it. I am now going to turn it back to Superintendent Flynn to close this up. Encourage all of you to enter any questions or comments into the Q&A.
Jennifer, you're muted.
Sorry about that. That was inevitable. Nate, thank you very much for that summary of the project and for laying out our preliminary thinking about what this might look like. So this is the point where we really do welcome your feedback. We have a few constants for this project, like the width of the right-of-way. We know what land is public land and available to us to work with. We know the location of utility right-of-ways and existing power lines, but there are also some choices. Do we anticipate that this path will primarily be used for transportation, or is this an additional recreational asset for the community and the park? Is this really about just getting from point A to point B, or is this about getting off the road and experiencing your park in a new way? Each alternative has positive and negative considerations, but we really want to hear what is most important to you. As we think about this new asset for our community, how do you think you would use it, or you think it should be used? Our Q&A is open. I understand from the team so far there's nothing in it. So if someone just wants to say hello so we know it's working, that would be great. We do have team members monitoring for your questions and your comments, and we will identify items that we can address for you right now in real time. We may or may not be able to answer your question, or we may run out of time, and our intention is to post written responses on our Pepsi site. The links are in the Q&A in the chat. We will post questions and answers to the Q&A to Pepsi for this project within a week. So if we don't get to you tonight, or we don't have an answer for you tonight, please do check back and we will have written responses. If you decide you don't know what to say tonight, or you need time to think about it, that's fine too. Please go to Pepsi, go into the system for this project, and give us your written feedback. All of those comments will be reviewed after July 10th when it closes, and will inform how we proceed from here. We'll take all your questions and comments back to our designers. We'll tighten the concept up, and we hope to have a more detailed version to share with you sometime this fall. I'm going to give this a pregnant pause to see if anyone would like to engage with us in real time, but this does conclude the formal presentation that we had prepared for you tonight. I see a comment from, looks like Principal Patrick Clark at Nauset High School. Thank you very much for participating tonight. About the monitoring or the policing of, if we end up with a narrower path, how do we really keep cyclists off of it? As a person who manages lots of independent thinkers, that will be a challenge. You know, it exists with our current sidewalk, and it won't go away if that's the alternative that we end up with. Nate, I think the next question might be best answered by you, and I don't know if we can both be live at the same time or not. If there's a way to just have us both be up, that would be great. Otherwise, if we want to pivot to Nate to talk about when we might start to see activity on the ground and construction, that would be wonderful.
Okay, yes, so thank you for the question. The question is, when is construction anticipated? So we are in the planning and preliminary design of the project. We estimate that construction could begin as soon as 2026. It would probably be in 2026 or 2027. That means that the multi-use path would be open and available for use in 2027 or 2028. We anticipate approximately 8 months of construction, give or take.
Nate, I don't know if you can hear me, but we were also have a question about the estimated length of each alternative.
So I can say, sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I think we're back on me. So I don't know that I have a precise length in terms of for the alignments, but what I can say is that the total length of Cable Road multi-use path will be approximately 1 mile. We have approximately 1/4 mile of existing trail. We'll be upgrading that, as we kind of mentioned, hopefully widening that and adding approximately 3/4 of a mile of new multi-use path. If we choose to go with the recreation concept, the longer concept, that adds about 1,000 feet to that. So that's a little less than 1/4 mile. So we're at like 1.1 miles, something like that. If we go with a more direct route, we're going to be pretty close to that 1 mile in total length.
I see a few coming in, so that's great. Thank you very much. I'm going to take one and then I'll give it back to Nate to do the other one. There's a question someone asked about public surveys and soliciting feedback, and the short answer is no. We have not sent a broad brush survey out. This is the opening of our public conversation about this trail. And so we are strongly encouraging folks to please share that Pepsi link and the press release with other folks who you think might be interested. And that is the mechanism right now for people to give us their thoughts and let us know their preferences for this project. All right, and I think we can switch back to Nate for the next one.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so we have a question. What is the process for making decisions on the proposed multi-mode trail options? So you're engaging in part of the process tonight. So we're going to carefully evaluate the design options, the alternatives. We're going to base them on engineering feasibility, environmental review, public input from like what we're getting tonight, in coordination with town and agency partners. I will just say that it's an extended process. The design is an extended process, and decision making in the National Park Service is a collaborative effort. So we're happy to have your comments tonight. We will use those in developing our preferred concept. All right, I think I've got another one coming in here. These are good, thank you. Okay, So Nate, do you have, let's see, do you have elevation profiles of the recreation and or transportation alternatives prepared? I'm curious about the topography and how much excavation could be required. That's a great question. No, unfortunately we don't. So we will have elevation profiles of both of these, and we hope to share those in the fall. Or I'm sorry, of our sort of preferred concept. We hope to share that in the fall. I will note that just with our preliminary analysis in terms of the earthwork required, it's not terribly significant for either concept. However, there is earthwork for both. I noticed in segment 2 in particular, we've got a little bit of topography, a hill, a slope to the north side of the road, so there'd be some earthwork. However, I'll also note that we are trying to reduce impacts as much as possible with this project. Coming in here, how many utility poles will need to change to underground if possible? So I'll note that it's a little early to say that it would be underground for sure. There would be other potential options. We could, in theory, design an alignment where we are able to avoid some of the poles. We would be looking for a minimum of a 2-foot separation between the multi-use path and utility poles. So we don't have an exact number yet. Another option would be potentially relocating some of the poles. So we're going to be looking at all that. We're in communication with the utility provider. We won't be able to provide a number for that until we do choose one of these concepts, and we will have more information about that in the fall. Will there be reflectors? Another question coming in. Will there be reflectors built into the trail? We're not considering reflectors at this time, no. Really good comments. I'm just kind of flipping through them, and we are getting them populated here. So thank you. All right, I think I'm going to turn it back to Superintendent Flynn here for a question.
Great, thank you. You know, one of the things I think folks are curious about is what our compliance pathway might be. You know, any federal action requires that we evaluate both the impact to our historic resources through Section 106, the federal law, and through NEPA, through the National Environmental Policy Act. So we have to, through NEPA, we have to evaluate the natural resource implications. And the short answer tonight is we don't know yet which of those pathways it will be, if this will be simple compliance, if this will be more complex compliance. Until we have the idea laid out on the ground and we understand what resources will be impacted, we can't get to exactly what that answer will be, but there will 100% be compliance done on this project and required for this project. I think there's also a question about what is the right of way there. So Cable Road is a National Park Service road, and for that road we have a 40-foot right of way. So from the center line, that's 20 feet on each side, and for most of the road, that's about a 9-foot right of way between the road shoulder, from the road shoulder 9 feet further onto the dirt shoulder or wooded shoulder, depending on where you are. So 40 foot altogether, 20 foot from the center line. In most places that gives us about 9 feet to work with if we are only staying in the right of way, which certainly will be the situation where we have private properties, and will be the situation at Nauset High School, where we only will be able to work within the federal right of way. Looks like the next one's for Nate. If we could switch back to him, please.
Okay, thank you. So this is a good question. So where can we go to receive updates on the progress of this project? So we can drop it again. It's in the chat or the Q&A there. We do have a Pepsi page. So we have a link there where we'll be providing updates. It's also a place you can provide comments until July 10th for this portion. And then again, we hope to do another public presentation this fall when we have a little bit more design information. We are hoping to do that one in person, and we will provide more information about that also on the Pepsi page. Once we're in construction, though, so that's a little bit down the road, the park will provide, Cape Cod National Seashore will provide updates on their website. Okay, another question coming in here. So I have seen instances where barriers are installed to calm traffic at intersections or where the path would be for walking only. Has this been considered? So we are going to consider how to create a buffer or space between the road and the multi-use path. A couple notes. So depending on the concept we go with here, that multi-use path may be very close to the roadway. In other words, really the barrier that we would consider in that situation would be a curb. Where we have more space, we certainly could consider trees, vegetation. I don't know that at this time we're considering like a built kind of concrete Jersey barrier type of barrier, but we are open to ideas and we'll consider all of this during the design process. Got a few more coming in here. And I think we are going to switch back to the superintendent for the next one.
Great. Thank you. The next question is, what is the estimated cost for the project and where is the funding coming from? So this project is funded through the Federal Transportation Lands Program. So that is funding both from the National Park Service and from the federal highways. And the estimated cost is about $1.5 million. Again, that's a gross estimate because clearly we don't have the specificity for the project yet, but that is the funding threshold that we are working with. We've also gotten a comment in or a question in about how will we connect this proposed trail with the existing rail trail. And the master plan for the Outer Cape Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan talks about that connection. And the Cape Cod National Seashore multimodal transportation study that let me reframe. So the Seashore did a multimodal transportation study, and in that final report, we identified the need for this section of trail from Cable Road out to the Nauset Light. The Outer Cape Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan identifies that other connector. So that connector would fall to the town or the state or the county to implement. We cannot use government funds and take on projects outside of our boundary. But we absolutely want to make sure that anything we construct will logically connect with those other trails that are already in the planning stage. So again, as part of this concept phase, we welcome any additional information that we may not have, but we are certainly talking with our counterparts in the town and in the county to make sure that anything we do will easily allow for intersection if and when those other components are able to be built. The other thing I wanted to just call out is, all of these things that you folks are asking about of, have you considered and what about, this is exactly the kind of input we were hoping for. So, as we can continue to flesh out what these alternatives look like, or what this trail may end up looking like, there are lots of choices to be made. As we look at a slope, what kind of retaining wall might need to be put in, and what might that look like, and how much of a barrier are people comfortable with? Is a curb sufficient? Is there something else folks have in mind? This is the exact kind of feedback we were hoping to get from you, so please take those coming. Even if we can't answer the question right now, this informs sort of the paths that we take from here. Not the literal paths, but the thought paths that we take. You know, where do we take the conversation? Where do we take the design as we think about what makes sense for our community? We're just pausing as we scan for the next thing to discuss. All right, we're going to give it a reasonable couple more minutes. We put back up the sort of the slide that really outlines sort of the two concepts, the two ideas, and the difference between the two. Clearly, the recreational path is much more of a bike trail and less of a transportation corridor, which is, of course, how we kind of started to coin them these ways. The recreational path is a bit more of a park-like experience. You know, gets folks separation from the road, lets folks really truly feel like they are a little bit remote, a little bit away from the hustle and bustle of Route 6 and Nauset Road and Cable Road. However, it takes a little longer. And if folks really are only interested in getting from the road to the beach, then perhaps the transportation path is the one that makes more sense for us. So as you frame up your comments, as you think about what to write in Pepsi, please help us, direct us in our thinking as to what will make most sense for those of us that are here most often, what will make sense to our visitors that you perhaps serve as members of our community. And we really, really appreciate the fact that 18 of you chose to spend your evening with us. I'm not seeing anything else. Someone asked if the presentation will be available for download. We will make the presentation compliant. We will make it 508 compliant, which is for folks with special abilities, folks who have hearing or sight impairments. Once we do that, we will post it to Pepsi. So that's a good moment for me to just sort of finalize now what. So we will put this presentation on the Pepsi site. We will work up questions and answers to those things that we couldn't answer on the spot tonight, and we will post those to the Pepsi site. So folks who couldn't join us in real time have the benefit of that information. And the Pepsi site will be open for 10 days. After that, we will transfer some of this information over to our park website so folks can track how we go. But in the near term, the Pepsi page is the place to go to provide your comments, to see this information. And please, I strongly encourage you to submit written comments to us, encourage your friends and colleagues to also review the information. This is a really important moment for us to get feedback from the community so that we know that the direction we're taking will serve the broader populace. And I'm just giving my team one more minute to flag for us anything they think we need to address right now. And otherwise, I'm going to close the program here in about 1 minute. All right, I think that's the end of our program for tonight. I appreciate you spending a part of your evening with us to learn more about this program, and please stay tuned for updates. Thank you very much.